What is up, my tiny Goliaths? Welcome back to part 2 of our little presentation on the Weimar Republic in Germany. And we are going to be looking at, again, what exactly is going on in Germany again, but more so from the people's perspective. You know, we're going to keep it going, we're going to keep it interesting, and we're going to start by looking at some beautiful little pictures. In this picture, you might be noticing, there's some kids there and they got some buckets, you know. What are they doing? You know, maybe they're playing with some Play-Doh, maybe they're finding some fun things to do. Well, unfortunately, that's not the case. In this picture, you see children eating their meals for their school day from very dirty lunch bins. Okay, that kind of killed my mood, not gonna lie, guys. But you know, maybe it gets more exciting. Maybe it stays happy. Here we have some kids playing with what might be like Legos, maybe something cool. You know, maybe Mega Bloks existed back then. I don't know. What are these? Oh, those are bundles or stacks of German money that isn't valuable enough to the point where they can just give it to children to play with. Yeah, moving on. Here we have another gentleman, you know, he looks like he's decorating the classroom. Oh, what exactly is that wallpaper, you might be asking? Well, that's also German money being used as wallpaper, so I guess it's much more, you know, effective to just use the German currency as wallpaper than it is to go out and just buy good wallpaper. Okay. Guys, my vibe is slowly waning. In this picture, you see a lone woman also with a bunch of money. And I don't think I could keep this up very much more, guys. In this picture, there's a woman loading up German money into her wooden fireplace. Because much like it not being able, or more effective to buy wallpaper, much like it not being more effective to buy toys, it's much easier just to take all of the money that you have that's worthless and use it as fuel in your wood-burning stove. So if you guys haven't caught the gist, Germany was going through some hard times, you know, much like in America in the Great Depression. And here's another example right here. This woman, she's on the side of the road, and not like in America, you know. In America, most of the people that were hit hardest by the Depression were, you know, the working class, people that were farmers, people that were more so in industry. But in this case, you know, in Germany, I'm going to spoil it for you guys. It hit everyone pretty hard. This woman in particular, she was pretty educated. She spoke 3 languages, was one of the few people that was like, you know, an expert at typewriting, and here she is on the side of the road offering her services to anyone that's willing to purchase them. Germany was not looking good, and the Weimar Republic was going through some struggles, if you can't already pick that up. And if you guys were looking back at those pictures and took a look at the dates, you'll notice that the dates for them were pretty early. Germany entered a depression back in 1919. Which in comparison to the United States entering in 1929, that's drastically sooner. Why exactly was Germany, you know, so quickly forced into such an economic downturn? Well, it's mostly due to how the Allies and, you know, the people that were negotiating the treaties ended up taking it out on Germany. So France and Britain in particular made sure that when the treaties were signed, that Germany was forced to, you know, pay for what they did during the war. They took a lot of their land and resources. And as we mentioned in the previous PowerPoint, that means less money, less economic output. And with that being the case, that's going to lead to suffering and an exacerbation of problems. And not to mention, not many people think about this, but after the war ended, France and Britain, they didn't initially lift all the restrictions on trade. In fact, for a few months after the war, they still prevented Germany from buying food and other supplies from other countries. Just further adding to the suffering that the country was going through. And perhaps the biggest, you know, culprit for Germany's suffering, and the one I really want you guys to get hammered down, remember this word. Germany needed to pay reparations, you know, the debts they incurred for causing damage to Britain, France, and the United States. These reparations are going to be this big shadow that's always causing pain and suffering on Germany for the, you know, years to come. You know, and these debts are not easy to pay, and there are going to be times when Germany, especially when you look at images to this right, And this picture in particular is pretty sad because that woman is taking a whole basket of money just to buy a little bit of vegetables. I believe those are potatoes right there. That whole basket's needed for that. Germany's going through a lot of pain, and, with that going on in the country, paying back debts is something that Germany's just not going to be able to do. And Germany's going to end up struggling to pay debts. And France, the one that Germany's paying most of those debts to, they're not going to like that. And, and there's going to be other instances that come up. For instance, what's going to happen in that one area we talked about, the Rhineland, the heart of the industry of Germany, we're going to see a bunch of radical groups that don't like France. Just a very small group end up causing some chaos. And just that little bit of chaos that's called, not even really noticeable or worth talking about in like modern times, France is going to decide that, you know what, we can't have that. And they're just going to take it entirely, sending in more military people, make it so that what little land and industry Germany had in that region is going to be even more suffocated by the likes of French rule. And it's only going to get worse from here. And, the United States is sitting across, and they're kind of observers to what's going across in Europe right now. Germany's really suffering, and they're trying to pay back France and Britain, and France in particular, also Britain, aren't really letting up. Now, if you go back to the United States during this time, right before the Great Depression, you might recall that the United States really liked giving out loans, especially to people and prospective businesses for pretty much anything. Well, of course, after World War I, we know the United States is doing great. And with them giving out loans like that, you kind of got to think, what's to stop them from giving loans to countries? And that's where we're going to get this thing called the Dawes Plan. So keep this cycle in mind. Germany owes money to France and Britain. And from the war, Britain and France owes money to the United States. The United States is going to bring this full circle. And what they're going to do is they're going to start giving more loans to Germany, making this circle, just big circle of money going around and around. United States gives loans to Germany for Germany to pay back the reparations. And the Allies are going to use that money from the reparations to pay back the United States. Now, I want you guys to kind of think for a second, what exactly is the point of this? Who benefits from it? Well, the answer to that is kind of complicated, but I'll keep it as simple as possible. The United States is looking to profit off of Germany, but while doing so, it's actually going to end up helping Germany quite a bit. The plan, which started in 1924, was actually really successful for a lot of years. Germany was being able to use that money to repay their debts to, Britain and France, while also using the extra money from the loan to rebuild their economy, hopefully get some industry going and make it so they're not dependent on these debts in the future. And that's all well and good. And it's really incredible that that ended up working as well as it did. But when it comes to Germany, the trend that you're going to notice is that good things just seemingly can never last. And in 1929, the Great Depression, of course, hit America. And that means America is going to have to stop giving loans to Germany. So that cycle before that was going on that seemed really nice and pretty simple, it's going to have to stop. And with France and Britain also entering their own depression, they're going to end up needing money of themselves. So they're going to start pressuring Germany more and more for money. It's kind of like when you get in trouble and you just really, really need the money up front. They're just always going to be breathing down Germany's neck and really trying to get as much as they can at all times. Now, we've been talking about France, Germany, Britain in like these grand terms as if they're massive countries, but I want to bring this back down to earth a little bit. How exactly was the average German feeling, and what were the average thoughts that they were having? Well, as you can see by the title, the Germans were getting very, very frustrated, and many things were crossing their mind. For starters, when we look back at that war guilt clause, the Germans didn't think that they're the ones that really even started the war. They got into it through alliances, It was a whole complicated mess, Austria-Hungary started something, and Germany got brought in, and they were just defending their ally. to keep it simple, Germany didn't think that they were the sole reason the war was started. And, looking at the way that, like, Britain, France, and the United States were treating them, almost like, infants in need of punishing, most Germans just found it extremely humiliating. Almost as if they're being looked down. Here they were, this great empire, underneath a great Kaiser who was looking to expand and grow and become a world power. And all of a sudden, they're being brought down and almost reprimanded by a parrot. It doesn't bode well for the average German, and they're going to get more and more frustrated about it. And they're going to end up constantly wondering, exactly whose fault is this? The average German doesn't fully understand why it's happening to them. And they're going to constantly think, exactly who's to blame. And, that's going to lead down a whole bunch of avenues down the road. And I think I took up enough of your guys' time today, so we're going to call it quits today on this German lesson. Again, all of these notes are going to be due sometime during the following week. I will have the actual due date posted on Google Classroom. Hopefully the lesson is easy enough to follow. Again, if you need to look at it at all, the slides are posted right on Google Classroom as well. So, I'll see you guys come Thursday, Friday, or if you're just watching it, next time we meet. Peace out, y'all.